Someone did something kind for you today. Maybe they complimented you. Maybe they went out of their way to help. Maybe they said something warm, something genuine, something that landed softly, and instead of just receiving it, you pulled it apart. Why did they say that? Do they actually mean it? What do they want from me? Or worse, do they feel sorry for me? You smiled on the outside. You said thank you. You looked like someone who received a kind thing gracefully. But inside, you were already 3 steps ahead, searching for the catch. And the kindness, instead of warming you, left you vaguely unsettled. Most people assume this is just a quirk, a personality trait, a mild social anxiety. But what's actually happening goes much deeper than that. And it starts somewhere you might not expect. Let's map the actual experience. Because it's very specific, and you probably recognize it in more situations than just one. A colleague tells you that you did a good job. Your first internal movement is not gratitude. It's a kind of lateral glance, a searching motion where your mind starts scanning for what they might have meant instead. Are they being sarcastic? Are they setting something up? Do they want something from me now? Or do they genuinely think I'm good at this, and if so, why does that feel harder to accept than the idea that they don't? A friend texts you out of nowhere to check in, and instead of feeling cared for, you feel a strange low-level alarm. People don't just check in for no reason. Something is off. Did I do something wrong? Are they about to ask for something? Or, and this one sits strangely, do they pity me? Someone you're dating says something tender, something real, something that looks, by any honest measure, like genuine affection. And you feel it for a second, maybe even less than a second. And then the analysis begins. How long have they felt this? Do they mean it, or are they just in a good mood? What happens when the mood changes? Is this real, or is this the version of me they think I am? And what happens when they find out otherwise? The kindness doesn't land. It hovers just outside of you while your mind works furiously to find a reason not to let it in. And here's the part that makes it lonelier. Other people seem to receive kindness so easily. They smile, they feel it, they move on. But for you, kindness triggers something that looks like suspicion, even when you trust the person. Even when there's no evidence of threat. Even when you genuinely want to believe them. Over time, this does something quiet but significant to your relationships. You become exhausting to reassure, not because you demand it, but because nothing seems to stick. Compliments are deflected. Affection is analyzed until it evaporates. Genuine care from others is held at arm's length, until it starts to feel like burden. And sometimes the people who care about you eventually stop trying so hard, not out of cruelty, but because they don't know how to get through. There's a psychological pattern underneath all of this. Researchers call it hypervigilance to positive social cues, a heightened alertness specifically triggered not by threat, but by warmth. And the reason it develops has almost nothing to do with the people in front of you now. It has to do with a much older question your brain is still trying to answer. Here's what this pattern is not. It is not cynicism. It is not arrogance. It is not an inability to connect. It is not ingratitude, even though it can look like that from the outside. It is a protection system, built carefully. Built because at some point, likely early, likely repeatedly, kindness was not safe to receive. Maybe it came with conditions. I'm being nice to you now, so you owe me something. Maybe it was inconsistent, warmth followed by withdrawal, affection followed by criticism. Maybe it was conditional on your performance. You were loved when you succeeded, ignored or dismissed when you didn't. Or maybe the kindness was simply absent enough that when it arrived, your system didn't know what to do with it, didn't know how to trust it, didn't know if it would stay, When kindness is unpredictable, when love arrives and disappears without clear logic, the brain learns a survival strategy. Don't get used to it. Don't let it in fully. Stay slightly elevated. Stay slightly ready for it to be taken away. That strategy was intelligent once. If kindness was genuinely unreliable, guarding against it made sense. Lowering your defenses fully would have made the withdrawal hurt more. Your nervous system learned. Warmth is data. But data requires verification. The problem is that system never got the update. It is still verifying, still scanning, still treating every act of kindness as a variable that needs to be tested before it can be trusted. You are not broken. You are protected. And the question is not how to stop being protected. It's how to update the system so it knows when the threat has passed. Let's go into what's actually happening when someone is kind to you and your brain refuses to simply receive it. It begins with something called the attachment system, a neurological framework for safety in relationships, first mapped by John Bowlby and extensively developed since. The attachment system has one core function: to assess whether closeness is safe. For most people, warmth and closeness activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and connect state. The body relaxes, the heart rate settles. There's a gentle opening. But for people whose early attachment experiences were unpredictable, conditional, or painful, warmth triggers something different. The brain has learned to associate closeness with potential threat. So instead of the parasympathetic system activating, the sympathetic system fires, the alert state. The same system designed to protect you from danger activates in response to someone being kind. This is not metaphorical. Research using neuroimaging has shown that people with insecure attachment patterns show elevated amygdala activity, the brain's threat detection center, in response to positive emotional stimuli that securely attached people process as neutral or comforting. Your brain is not misreading kindness as malicious. It is reading it as uncertain. And in the brain's risk assessment system, uncertain is treated similarly to dangerous. Because the cost of being wrong about a threat you missed is always higher than the cost of being overly cautious. There's a second mechanism layered underneath this. It's called cognitive dissonance in the context of self-concept. Here's how it works. The brain builds a model of the self. A stable, consistent internal image. For many people who grew up in environments where they were criticized, overlooked, or conditionally valued, that self-model contains a core belief, usually implicit: I am not quite enough. I am not quite worthy of consistent love. Now, when someone offers genuine kindness, it doesn't just feel good, it conflicts with the existing model. And the brain, being a consistency-seeking machine, does something counterintuitive. It works to resolve the conflict, not by updating the self-model, but by finding a reason to discount the kindness. They don't know me well enough yet. They're being polite. They want something. They feel sorry for me. Because it is psychologically less threatening to find a flaw in the compliment than to update a self-image that has been stable for years. Here's a metaphor for this. Imagine your self-concept as a room you've lived in for a long time. The furniture is old. Some of it is worn. Some of it you don't even like anymore. But you know where everything is. You can navigate the room in the dark. Kindness is someone arriving with a new piece of furniture. Something better, something you actually need. But accepting it means rearranging the room, moving things, making space, temporarily not knowing where everything is. And the brain, especially a brain trained on unpredictability, finds the temporary disorientation of rearranging more threatening than keeping the worn furniture in its familiar place. The mental model to hold here: your self-concept has gravity. Whatever image of yourself has been in place, the longest exerts the most gravitational pull. Kindness that contradicts that image doesn't just feel good, it feels destabilizing. And the mind's response to destabilization is to restore equilibrium, often by rejecting the kindness rather than integrating it. These are not instructions to simply receive kindness better. They are specific, psychologically grounded practices for working with a nervous system that learned the wrong lesson about warmth and helping it slowly learn something different. Notice the moment the analysis begins, what to do. Start tracking the precise moment when you shift from receiving kindness to analyzing it. Not to stop the analysis, just to notice it. To name what's happening: I'm in verification mode. Why it works in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's reasoning center, can modulate amygdala activity once it becomes consciously aware of what's happening. Labeling a threat response has been shown in neuroscience research by Matthew Lieberman to reduce its intensity measurably. You are not fighting the system. You are stepping slightly outside it by observing it. That small step of observation is the beginning of choosing differently. Real-life example: a friend tells you they love spending time with you. You feel the warmth for half a second. Then the analysis starts. This time, instead of following the analysis, you just name it internally. There it is. The system kicked in. You don't force yourself to believe the kindness. You just notice that you left it. That noticing is meaningful. More meaningful than it might seem. Slow the response down deliberately. What to do: when you receive a kind gesture or words, resist the urge to immediately deflect, analyze, or respond. Create a brief deliberate pause, a breath, a moment of stillness. Let the kindness exist in the space before your system moves to process it away. Why it works in the brain: the threat response is fast, it activates within milliseconds, but conscious evaluation is slower. By introducing a deliberate pause, you create space for the prefrontal cortex to come online before the amygdala has already decided. This is the neurological basis of what researchers call response flexibility, the capacity to insert a gap between stimulus and reaction. That gap is where agency lives. Real-life example: someone compliments your work in a meeting. In the past, you'd immediately say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I had a lot of help," before you'd even process the compliment. Now you pause. One breath. You let the words exist for a moment. Then you say, "Thank you. That means something to me." You don't have to feel it fully yet. You just don't move it away immediately. Separate the source from the content. What to do: when you find yourself questioning someone's motives, practice separating the question, "Why are they saying this?" from the question, "Is what they're saying true?" Both questions are valid, but they answer different things. A person can have mixed motives and still be offering something real. Why it works in the brain. This is a cognitive restructuring technique rooted in CBT research, the practice of identifying when the brain is conflating two separate threads of evaluation and treating them as one. When motive and content are collapsed together, any suspicion about motive automatically invalidates the content. Separating them allows you to hold both. I'm not fully sure why they said this, and it might still be true. Real-life example: a manager praises you in front of the team. You immediately wonder if they want something. Maybe they do. But even if their motive is partly strategic, the assessment of your work still contains information. It still reflects something real. You can hold the uncertainty about motive without letting it erase the data. Build evidence against the old self model. What to do? Start a private record. Written, not just mental, of moments when kindness was genuine and didn't come with a cost. Not a gratitude journal. Something more specific. Documented instances that directly contradict the belief that love is conditional or unsafe. Why it works in the brain. The self-model with gravitational pull was built on accumulated evidence. It updates the same way, through accumulated counter-evidence. Not one transformative moment. Not a single profound realization. Repeated, low-intensity experiences that gradually shift what the brain treats as expected. Research on memory reconsolidation suggests that existing emotional memories can be updated when they are recalled in the presence of new, contradicting experience. You are building the new experience deliberately. Real-life example. Your partner does something thoughtful with no occasion, no request, no payoff. You write it down, just one line. Date, what happened, how it felt, not to analyze it, to record it. Over months, you return to the record, and the brain begins to have access to a different data set than the one it was running on before. Practice receiving without earning. What to do? Notice how often you try to immediately reciprocate kindness, to quickly balance the ledger, to neutralize any sense of owing or vulnerability. Practice, occasionally and deliberately, letting kindness be received without immediate return. Why it works in the brain. Attachment research identifies a pattern called compulsive self-reliance. The tendency to immediately give back as a way of eliminating the vulnerability of receiving. When you immediately reciprocate, you restore a sense of control and equivalence. But you also prevent the experience of being held, of letting someone else's care simply exist without needing to neutralize it. Allowing yourself to receive without immediately returning trains the nervous system that receiving is not a trap, that it doesn't create debt, that it doesn't require protection. Real-life example. A friend brings you something, food, a small gift, an act of care, and your instinct is to immediately figure out how you'll return it. This time you say thank you, and you let it be. Not forever, not passively, just for the moment. You let the care exist without balancing it. And you notice whether the world actually falls apart when you do. It won't, but the nervous system needs to find that out through experience, not through being told. Here's the model to carry. Your brain built a room a long time ago. It was built from what love looked like in the earliest environments you inhabited. If love was conditional, the room learned to brace. If warmth was inconsistent, the room learned to watch the door. If care came with cost, the room learned to check the price tag before accepting anything. That room is not broken. It is well built. It protected you when protection was needed. The problem is simply that you are no longer in the environment the room was built for, and the room doesn't know that yet. The work is not to demolish the room. It is to renovate it slowly, carefully, with evidence, not willpower. Each moment you let kindness exist for one breath longer. Each compliment you receive without immediately deflecting. Each act of care you allow without immediately reciprocating. Each data point you record that says, "This was real and it was safe," is a small renovation. A window put in where there was a wall. The room doesn't change overnight, but it changes. And the person living in it slowly begins to believe that warmth is not something to be survived. It is something to be received. There's something quietly exhausting about spending your life one step removed from warmth. Receiving it from a distance, processing it instead of feeling it. Letting it almost reach you before pulling back into analysis. You've probably been doing this for so long that you barely notice it anymore. But somewhere underneath the system, underneath the vigilance and the scanning, and the need to verify before you trust, there's a part of you that just wants to let it in. That wants to hear something kind and believe it without the interrogation. That wants to be cared for and feel it rather than study it. That part of you is not naive. It's not weak. It is simply the version of you that existed before you learned that warmth required wariness. You don't have to dismantle the wariness all at once. You don't have to force yourself to feel things you're not ready to feel. You just have to begin noticing one small moment at a time where you leave the kindness outside. And then, occasionally, deliberately, leave the door open just a little longer before the analysis begins. That's not vulnerability. That's a choice. The smallest and most significant choice you can make in the direction of actually being here. In your own life, in your own relationships, in your own skin, fully. Rather than almost